I have stood in some outrageous hotel rooms in my time. Rooms with private butlers, rooms with grand pianos, rooms where the bathtub had a better view than my entire apartment. But there is exactly one hotel room on this planet that wears the single highest price tag ever printed on a night's sleep. $100,000 per night, and you can't even book just one night because the house demands a 2-night minimum, which means the cheapest possible stay is $200,000. That is a house in most of America, traded for 2 sunrises. But here's the part that pulled me in, the part almost nobody talks about. Most of the people who actually sleep in this room pay absolutely nothing, not a cent. And once you understand why, you'll understand how modern Las Vegas really works. So tonight, you and I are checking in. Let me show you the Empathy Suite. To find it, you actually have to leave the Strip. The Palms Casino Resort sits about a mile west of Las Vegas Boulevard, close enough to see the lights, far enough to feel like a secret. And at the very top of its fantasy tower, behind a private elevator, sits a 2-story sky villa spanning roughly 9,000 square feet. That is bigger than 4 average American homes stacked into a single hotel room. And the nightly rate is more than the median American household earns in an entire year. One night, 1 year of a family's income. When it opened on March the 1st, 2019, the Palms called it the most expensive hotel suite in America and said it might well be the most expensive in the world. They weren't exaggerating, but no number on the rate card prepares you for what's waiting behind the front door. Because the moment the doors part, you are greeted by sharks, 2 full-grown bull sharks, suspended in a tank of formaldehyde, frozen mid-swim, facing opposite directions. The piece is called Winner/Loser, and it is not a decoration. It is an original artwork created in 2018 specifically for this room by the man who designed every inch of the place. And I don't mean an interior designer or some hotel brand consultant. The Palms handed this entire suite to the most commercially successful and most controversial artist alive. His name is Damien Hirst, and to understand this room, you need 60 seconds of his story. In 1991, the advertising tycoon Charles Saatchi offered to fund whatever this young Londoner wanted to make. What he made was a 14-foot tiger shark floating in formaldehyde, with a title only an artist could love, The Physical Impossibility of Death in the Mind of Someone Living. It sold for £50,000, and one British tabloid sneered, 50,000 for fish without chips. 13 years later, the hedge fund billionaire Steve Cohen bought that same shark for a reported $8 million, and one famous book put the real number closer to 12. In 2007, Hirst cast a human skull in platinum and covered it in 8,601 flawless diamonds, priced at £50 million. And in September 2008, in the very same week Lehman Brothers collapsed, he auctioned 218 of his own works at Sotheby's in one sitting and walked away with about $198 million, the biggest single artist auction ever staged by a living artist. The Sunday Times has crowned him Britain's richest artist, with a fortune reported at $384 million, and some estimates now push him past $1 billion. That is the man Las Vegas hired to design a hotel room. So let's take the tour he built. Past the sharks, the living space unfolds in grey Venus marble, with floor-to-ceiling windows framing the entire Las Vegas Strip like a postcard you get to live inside. At the center of the room curves a 13-seat bar, and hovering above it is a piece called Here for a Good Time, Not a Long Time, a real marlin skeleton facing a taxidermied marlin mid-flight. Only in Vegas do you sip a martini underneath a memento mori. Across the walls, a 10-panel work called Casino Royale scatters Hirst's famous butterflies over glossy canvases, and near the games room hangs one of his signature medicine cabinets. This one titled, of course, Vegas. 6 original Damien Hirst artworks in total, built into the room itself, a collection reportedly worth tens of millions of dollars. The pills, the butterflies, the sharks, death and beauty and money, staring at you while you order room service. And then there's my favorite part. Upstairs, the suite simply runs out of building and keeps going. A private pool tiled in a mosaic of Hirst's butterflies, cantilevers off the edge of the tower, hanging in the open air with the whole glittering strip laid out beyond your toes. There are 2 King Master bedrooms, a private gym, a salt relaxation room, a massage room, and a powder gray lounge for the entourage, because at this level there is always an entourage. The suite can host a private party of dozens without anyone touching a casino floor. Now, what does $200,000 actually buy you besides the postcode? A butler around the clock for anything from a midnight steak to a 3 a.m. bath drawn at the perfect temperature. A chauffeured car on standby for your entire stay. A private behind-the-scenes art tour of the suite and the resort. And a $10,000 resort credit tossed in the way a normal hotel leaves a mint on your pillow. $10,000, the price of a decent used car, included as a courtesy. And if you're tempted to stretch the trip, do the math with me. A full week up here would run $700,000. That is a brand new Porsche 911, burned every single night, gone by checkout. Stay a month and you've spent $3 million on sleep. Nobody does that, of course, which raises the obvious question: who is this room actually for? But to understand why this room exists at all, you have to rewind the Palms itself. This place opened in 2001, built by the Maloof family, and it became the celebrity casino of the 2000s. MTV filmed The Real World here in 2002. In 2005, the Maloofs added the $600 million fantasy tower, stuffed with themed suites, including one with its own basketball court, and the infamous Hugh Hefner Sky Villa, $40,000 a night, with a rotating bed under a mirrored ceiling and its own cantilevered pool. Sound familiar? The Empathy Suite is that villa's successor, the old Playboy fantasy reborn as a $100,000 art gallery. Because by the mid-2010s, the Palms had faded, and a company called Red Rock Resorts bought the aging property and made one of the boldest bets in Vegas history, a $690 million renovation, reported as the most expensive in the history of Las Vegas. New restaurants, new nightclubs, and at the very top, one showpiece designed to put the Palms back on every front page on Earth. This room. And as a headline, it worked. As a business? Hold that thought. First, let's answer the question you've been asking since the beginning. Who on earth pays $100,000 for a hotel room? And the honest answer is almost nobody, because that was never really the plan. From the day it opened, the Palms made the deal public. The Empathy Suite is complimentary for guests holding a $1 million line of credit at the casino. In the industry, they call these players whales, the gamblers whose single weekend can move a casino's entire quarter. It's the oldest trade in Las Vegas. The house gives away rooms, jets, and dinners, called comps, because the real bill is settled at the tables. The Empathy Suite is simply that old trade, scaled up to $100,000 a night. Fly in a player prepared to wager millions at baccarat, and a $200,000 suite becomes a rounding error, cheaper than the interest on his markers. The sticker price isn't really a price. It's a velvet rope printed in numbers, a way of telling the whole world exactly what kind of guest this room is for, which means the most expensive hotel room on Earth is, most nights, technically free. You just need $1 million on the line downstairs. And now the twist nobody at that 2019 ribbon cutting saw coming. The bet failed. Even before the world changed, it was wobbling. Chaos, the resort's flagship new nightclub, had reportedly signed the DJ Marshmello to a $60 million residency, then shut its doors entirely after barely 7 months in business. Then, just over a year after the Empathy Suite welcomed its first guest, the pandemic shut Las Vegas down entirely, and the Palms went dark. Under Red Rock, it never reopened. In December 2021, having poured roughly $1 billion into buying and rebuilding the property, they sold the entire resort, the tower, the casino, the sharks and all, for $650 million, less than the renovation alone had cost. The buyer made history, the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, making the Palms the first casino resort in Las Vegas ever owned by a Native American tribe. They reopened the doors in April 2022, and the Empathy Suite survived the entire wreck untouched, still at the top of the tower, still wearing the same 6-figure price tag. So is it truly the most expensive hotel room in the world? Let me give you the honest answer, because on this channel we always do. If you go by the published rate, yes, nothing on Earth has ever carried a higher sticker than $100,000 a night. But the travel guides will remind you that the Royal Penthouse Suite in Geneva, at around $80,000 a night, 12 bedrooms, bulletproof glass, Presidents and Kings on the guest book, is the most expensive suite you can simply call up and reserve. I've told that story before. The Empathy Suite plays a different game. Its crown is the price tag itself, the highest number ever printed on a hotel room door, a number designed less to be paid than to be talked about. And here we are, talking about it. Which brings me to the name. Of everything in this suite, the thing I can't stop thinking about is the word on the door. Hirst could have called it anything. The Shark Suite, the Billionaire Villa. He called it Empathy. A room wrapped in artworks about death and money, floating above a casino floor where fortunes change hands every hour, named after the one thing money famously can't buy. In a building where the house always wins, I'll let you decide whether that name is sincere or the best joke he ever told. Me? I think it's both, because you're not really renting a bedroom here. You're sleeping inside the punchline of the most expensive artist alive, and for 2 nights and $200,000, the punchline is yours. So here's my question for you. If the choice were yours, would you pay the $200,000 outright, or would you put $1 million on the line at the tables and earn those keys for free? Tell me in the comments, I genuinely want to know. And if you enjoyed this look behind the velvet rope, stick around, because the world of the absurdly expensive goes so much deeper than one night in Vegas.